We begin in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Peace be upon you all. Welcome to our program, Ilmo Hikmat. I am delighted to welcome you. I am Muhammad Hassan Ilyas. Dear viewers, there used to be a time when, if we raised any questions related to God, religion, or faith, our elders would scold us, telling us to repent, seek forgiveness, and not let such thoughts occupy our hearts. But now we live in an era where every child is connected to the world through social media, YouTube, Google, and all sorts of information reaches them. They comment on these matters, think about them, and reflect on them. In this age, the questions that were once considered too sensitive to discuss openly, which were suppressed, snubbed, ignored, must now be addressed. If we want to keep our new generations firmly rooted in faith, a faith which is consciously accepted and understood, then we must provide them with answers based on knowledge and reasoning. This is the purpose of our discussion today. We will address some questions about the existence of God, and we will revisit certain aspects in greater detail. It is often said by those who doubt religion that God is sadistic, that he desires to inflict pain on people, that he is unjust. Religion provides answers to these questions. To discuss this topic, we are honored to have with us the esteemed scholar, Mr. Javed Ahmed Ghamidi. Peace and blessings upon you, Ghamidi Sahib.
Peace and blessings upon you too.
Ghamidi Sahib, thank you for your time. Atheism holds a comprehensive perspective on theology and philosophy, and it has provided some alternative explanations regarding existence. In this discussion, we will focus on the objections raised against the God we believe in as Muslims, the God of the divine tradition. There are about 10 questions that present a different image of God. I want to address each of these points calmly and logically so that we can understand them better. Those who have drifted away from religion and criticize it are also our brothers. They are part of our families, our society, and we must invite them back. The first point often raised is that there is injustice, oppression, and persecution in this world. If there is a God, the God we believe in, why does he remain silent? Why doesn't he stop the oppressor?
We have made it clear many a times that when we object to something, we must first understand the logic of what we are critiquing in all its aspects. When we believe in God, we do so based on the teachings of the prophets. It has been clarified that the actions of creation raise questions, and the answer to these questions is that our Creator is a necessity of reason. Reason cannot be satisfied with anything less. We are compelled by our consciousness to seek our Creator. Who is that Creator? Atheism has provided one answer. The prophets have conveyed another answer. When we found the prophets' answers to be true and accepted them, we must then ask the prophets about the attributes of the Lord they have introduced. What are his attributes? What are his laws? How does he deal with humanity? It is crucial to understand whether, after creating the universe and conscious beings like humans, he is resting somewhere, or if he has a relationship with us. If he has a relationship, what is its nature? The prophets have informed us that the Creator of the universe and of you is the same. He is the all-knowing, all-wise being. If you believe in him, one day you will have the honor of meeting him and being presented before him. The prophets have also explained the purpose of this world, where we are born and then die. They have told us that the law of trial governs this world. Humans and jinn are both conscious and accountable beings. That is, they are capable of distinguishing between good and evil, and they have been placed in this world for a test. It is true, God's scheme is something that not everyone accepts, but for those who accept it, you must also accept its necessary implications. The method of reason is that when you accept a foundation, you must also accept its requirements. If this world is created for a test, then what is being tested? Clearly, it is free will. The beings being tested must have free will. If they have free will, they must also have the opportunity to exercise it. What is free will? It is the ability to choose, but without the freedom to act, it is meaningless. This freedom must be granted. For this freedom to exist, it is necessary that during the period of this freedom, our Lord generally does not interfere in our affairs. This is precisely what has been established. God has granted freedom and will. As a necessary consequence of this freedom and will, injustice also arises, oppression occurs, humans exploit one another, and when they gain power, they try to suppress others. The instincts placed within them, such as the instinct for dominance, lead to violence and destruction. Similarly, the capacity for competition and rivalry given to satisfy certain instincts also plays its role. This leads to theft, robbery, and violations of people's honor and dignity. All these are, in fact, the necessary consequences of free will. This is also our honor. It is the basis of our humanity. This free will is what makes us consider ourselves a distinguished creation. Compared to other creations, we possess consciousness and are aware of our consciousness. And in this way, we know, understand, perceive things, and deduce their logical consequences. The civilization we have built, the inventions we have made, the new world we have created, all these are the results of the exercise of free will. Generally, this free will is used for good. Humans use their free will for noble causes, for good deeds, and for charitable works. They establish high-level institutions, create cultural traditions, and bring about great civilizations. The opportunity to overstep these limits has been given to them by their Creator. To demand that the Creator intervene during this period is to demand the destruction of His entire scheme. All these are positive uses of free will. However, it is also misused. It is not that all cities in the world are now thriving, prosperous, and full of life. People live in them, but there are also prisons. This is because humans sometimes overstep their limits. If He were to intervene to stop the oppressor, the thief, or the robber, then no one would have the freedom to act. And if there is no freedom to act, then what kind of test is it? What kind of trial? And what justification would remain for the results that have been described? Therefore, when we criticize something, we must first understand the purpose behind it. Without considering the purpose, any criticism is essentially imposing one's own mindset on another's. And there is no worse form of criticism than this.
The point is clear, Ghamidi Sahab. Now, you had mentioned a point earlier that the Creator has a scheme, a purpose in front of Him, and to achieve that purpose, He has granted free will. When free will is granted, it will inevitably be misused, leading to the emergence of oppression and injustice. The Creator does not intervene in this. But it can be said, Ghamidi Sahib, that God maintains this scheme by granting free will, consciousness, and freedom. However, where excesses begin, where oppression starts, He does intervene, making it clear that the servant has misused his freedom and He holds them accountable for their sins. But if someone is being oppressed, we see that God does intervene. For example, when someone attempts to kill a prophet, God raises the prophet to Himself and intervenes directly. If He intervenes in such cases, why can't He do so in the general affairs of the world?
That is why I used the word generally. The exception for prophets was necessary for guidance. If this exception were applied to everyone, the test would cease to exist. Such intervention would completely nullify the test. The reason why people today deny God or raise questions about Him is precisely because of this lack of intervention. The world appears to run on its own, as if the universe itself is doing everything. This is why atheists at an intellectual level always answer the question of who the Creator is by saying that the universe itself is the Creator. They claim that the universe contains the forces and effects that operate automatically like a self-running machine, and everything emerges from it. How does this misconception arise? It arises from the absence of intervention. If intervention were to occur, this misconception would disappear. God is testing both our knowledge and our actions. For the test of knowledge, it is necessary that such situations remain, which can lead people to misconceptions. We are not to follow the path of misconception, but to make the right decisions. This is only possible when such possibilities exist. Many people, based on their own reasoning, suggest to God that He should create the universe as they desire. But the decision has been made by the Creator, and He has done so considering all aspects. I often say that if you want to see perfection in this world, look at it in terms of its purpose. This world was not created to manifest the ultimate perfection of God's attributes. That will happen after the day of judgment. This world is perfect in terms of being a test. From every angle, whether it's knowledge or of action, there is a trial and examination. And it is such an extraordinary test that you must put in all your effort. God sends prophets, reveals His attributes through them, and shows signs, yet the possibility remains for someone to reject it if they wish. This is how it should be. If this were not the case, the law of trial would not exist. It would just be a mere formality.
You mentioned that it is evident that God desires a test, and in this test, there is also a veil, a barrier, so that people may turn to alternative explanations. Only then can they be tested to see if they stand firm on the truth. Even when God intervened, the test was not compromised. Despite witnessing God's support for the prophets, people still denied them. So even if God were to intervene repeatedly, the test would still remain intact.
This is not the case. The affairs of the prophets occur occasionally in different eras of history. This is why the test remains. Otherwise, in their time, God's judgment would have been executed, and it would have been applied to all humanity in this world. If such judgments were continuously executed, the development of human potential would cease. People would live in constant fear, and nothing would progress. When divine punishment befell nations during the time of the prophets, entire communities were destroyed. Do you want such events to occur every day for humanity? If it were so, how would the test remain? There are intervals, periods of respite, so that these events fade from memory and humans can think freely again. Reflect on this. Death comes, and for 2 or 3 days, it preoccupies everyone. Everyone's attention is on death, and the grave becomes visible to all. If death were to visit our homes every day, could we accomplish anything? Could we function? Could we enjoy life? Could we develop our inner potential? Could we create civilizations? God's scheme is comprehensive. In this scheme, our limited minds should not propose suggestions. We should accept the divine as it is. God has clearly stated that He is testing both our knowledge and our actions. He has even said that if the test were not the purpose, what would be the need to create the system of life and death? Life and death exist precisely so that there is a fixed period with death looming overhead, and during this time, it is observed what attitude humans adopt. The Quran has expressed this in these words: He who created death and life to test which of you is best indeed. I want to see who among you performs righteous deeds. Righteous deeds stem from correct knowledge, and so who chooses correct knowledge, and as a result, who performs righteous deeds? This is what I want to observe. I have created the system of life and death for this very purpose. Whenever such a system is created, a limited time is given, and for a conscious creation like humans, this time should not be such that every day some calamity strikes, earthquakes occur, or storms arise. No, these things should happen occasionally so that humans can live. If these events were to happen continuously, the condition that arises when prophets come to a nation would persist. What would be the result? The result would be that all human potential would be completely stifled. Nothing would remain.
The point is clear. Let us move forward. Ghamidi Sahib, the first point you made is that God has a scheme, a law of trial and testing, the result of which manifests in the world in the form of oppression, injustice, and the misuse of free will. A person might say, yes, this is God's doing, but God Himself in His book expresses His disapproval of such actions. In fact, He warns those who establish oppression, tyranny, and dominance, promising them His wrath, punishment, and the fire of hell. This weakens the argument of those who criticize religion or God, claiming that God is sadistic. You have justified His actions, but what does God Himself say about these actions in His book? Is He praising them?
No, the entire book stands against such actions, and in reality, the book condemns these actions. It tells us to use the time we have been given wisely. God does not desire for humans to commit oppression. He does not want people to steal, loot others' wealth, or harm anyone's honor. God does not want this. Humans have been given freedom, but during this time, such actions are not in accordance with His will. He has permitted it, and this permission means that the time given to us is for a greater purpose. There is a grand scheme of God that must be carried out. No intervention should occur that would harm this scheme. Therefore, the system of trial in this world must remain intact in all its glory. This is God's will. Once we understand this, we realize what God desires. He has conveyed this through His prophets. He wants no harm to come to anyone by our hands or our words. He wants us to live as His true servants, as guardians of peace in the world. He wants everyone to receive goodness from us. This is what He wants. But when humans misuse their free will, then I will take retribution. What does retribution mean? Some people, focusing on the Urdu word, start interpreting it as punishment. It means I will give punishment, I will take revenge. If you have oppressed someone, wronged them, or harmed their life, wealth, or honor, I will take retribution for it. Even now, if you look at the individual level, the injustices people commit against each other are countless. Oppression occurs both directly and indirectly. Our actions lead to oppression. Our societal activities lead to oppression. The way we establish governments leads to oppression. Our instinct for dominance leads to oppression. So oppression happens both directly and indirectly. God will hold all of this accountable in His court. He says He will take retribution on behalf of the oppressed. God is the avenger. He will take revenge, but on whose behalf? On behalf of the oppressed, those who suffered injustice in this world and found no justice in any earthly court. Even today, many good governments exist. There is no doubt that humans have progressed in governance. Yet, has oppression been eradicated? Has tyranny ended? Even the most civilized governments remain silent when their interests are at stake. Genocide continues, people die, children perish, and everyone sits quietly. If you ask why this silence exists, it is clearly due to political strategy. When their interests are threatened, their attitude changes. When their interests are served, their attitude is entirely different. Why does this happen? Because when humans are given power, whether as individuals, groups, or nations, they act according to their instinct for dominance. They strive to maintain their superiority. This struggle for superiority leads to oppression at national and global levels. Have we not seen wars in our time? Have we not seen humans oppressing other humans? Have we not seen entire communities destroyed? We are witnessing all of this even now. Despite the existence of large peacekeeping organizations, have the ongoing wars been stopped? Has anyone been held accountable? Are we in a position to investigate every individual and every action to determine who the oppressor is? It is God alone who will deliver His judgment and bring these oppressors to justice. This is why God has said that He will take retribution. This is solace for the oppressed, those who suffer injustice, whose rights are trampled. If this trial exists, it would be the greatest injustice if people suffered oppression here and no one held the oppressors accountable. If God were to intervene as people demand, they would become restless. He says He will not intervene during this period of trial, but will establish His court afterward. Then He will hold every crime accountable. People say this makes Him a vengeful God. But if He were not vengeful, my life would be meaningless, because there is oppression, tyranny, suffering, and pain. The trials humans face in this world demand justice and punishment. If you look at the world, the entire system is based on reward and punishment. Every government, every law, every institution operates on this principle. Courts exist to enforce this. Justice and punishment are manifestations of human nature. Where there is free will, there will be misuse. Where there is misuse, justice and punishment become necessary. This is what the Quran explains. When you stand before God, He will hold every action accountable. He will see how you treated the poor, the oppressed, the slaves, the employees, and those who were weak physically or mentally. The results of this test must be revealed. If they are not revealed, then everything in this world would collapse. For me, would be darkness. If you remove God's retribution, nothing remains.
The point is clear. Ghamidi Sahib, two beautiful points have emerged. The oppression, tyranny, and dominance in the world occur by God's permission, not by His pleasure. The condition is such that when God speaks of taking retribution there, it is said that He is a great oppressor and tyrant and He will burn people there. Yet the demand being made is that He should do the same here. Take retribution here. Ghamidi Sahib, I want to elaborate on these 2 points a bit more. The first question is more debated. We see it in the world and in everyday life. I have 2 children and I observe them as well. I try to explain things to them, guide them with patience, but when they don't listen, I leave them to their own devices, thinking they will learn when they fall. Now, when they fall, I don't want them to fall, but I remain silent when they do. Someone watching from the outside might say, he wants them to fall, otherwise he would step in and stop them.
In the world, when it comes to the future, we also act accordingly. In the world, humans know that if they don't get an education, don't learn a skill, don't understand things, and don't learn how to live in the world, the consequences will be terrible, and they do turn out that way. Therefore, we try our best to train our children. We guide them through hardships and difficulties. Sometimes we leave them alone so they can learn and understand things. Why do we do all this? Because we know the future that awaits them. That same future has been placed in the hereafter, and the prophets, peace be upon them, are doing the same thing regarding that future as we do for our children's worldly future, for our loved ones, for the governance of states, and for our nations. It's all the same. There's nothing we don't do in this world. In other words, human consciousness, according to its structure, has implemented God's entire scheme in the world. The world operates on this very scheme.
Oh wow, such an interesting point.
It operates on the principles of justice and punishment. We haven't been able to create anything different from this. There are only 2 possibilities. Either humans change, or the creator of the universe decides to end the trial and punish every oppressor. There are only 2 paths, no other. If humans remain as they are, we will see the misuse of free will, and it will happen. And if there is misuse, then its consequences must follow. The logical outcome of the consciousness of good and evil given to me is that good should yield good results, and evil should yield bad results. If the results of good and evil were fully realized in this world, the matter would end there. But we know that doesn't happen. Even the best governments in the world cannot deliver justice to every individual. They cannot address every case. When a case is filed, governments are often helpless. There are many crimes we all know have happened. Many of us have personally witnessed them, but they are not proven in courts. They fall victim to the flaws of the judicial system. Sometimes it's not even possible to determine who should be prosecuted or who should prove what. So, the court of God is actually what every one of us should desire, that such a court be established. And the Lord of the universe should bring the oppressors to justice. Those oppressors who have violated people's lives, wealth, and honor will stand in the dock. For those servants of God who have strived to fulfill their duty of worship, there are glad tidings of forgiveness. They should have no fear.
The point is clear. Now I want to touch on another aspect briefly. When it is said that God will take retribution, that on the day of judgment, every act of oppression, tyranny, and dominance will be accounted for, and nothing will be left unaddressed, a common objection arises in people's minds. What will happen is far in the future. Whether it will happen or not is uncertain. There are questions about it. Another aspect that the Quran itself clarifies is that God has not merely condemned oppression and tyranny and said He will take retribution on the day of judgment. Rather, He has instructed His believers in this world to rise and defend themselves and others, defend places of worship, engage in jihad to protect themselves and others, even at the cost of their lives if their rights are violated. So God has established a duty in His religion where a believer sacrifices their life to stop oppression.
This is part of God's scheme. That is why it is said that religion is not something external. It is based on the guidance that the demands of our nature puts forth. Where there was room for error, God has provided guidance and established a path for us. In this world, what we do is in accordance with the demands of our nature. It is under the demands of nature that we have formed governments. I have often said that governments should be formed, social systems established, armies and police departments created, all to prevent the misuse of free will. If free will is eliminated, there is no need for governments, armies, police, prisons, or courts. Free will, when used positively, gives rise to civilization, culture, knowledge, and diversity in the world. But its misuse necessitates the creation of such a vast system. Consider this. People earn their livelihoods and give a significant portion of their earnings to this system. Why? So that they can live in peace. States, governments, and social systems exist for this purpose. This is the manifestation of human nature. What is happening on a small scale here must happen on a global scale. And when it happens on a global scale, we call it the Day of Judgment. After that, there will be reward and punishment. That reward and punishment must be eternal, unless the Lord of the universe, seeing someone's overall conduct, grants forgiveness.
Now, Ghamidi Sahib, God does not intervene daily, but among the demands of faith in God is the establishment of justice. If you are a Muslim, then you must do good conduct, stand for justice, and speak the truth with fairness. The Prophet, peace be upon him, even said that if you see evil and have the ability to stop it but do not, then your faith is not intact. So while God does not intervene, He demands from His servants that if they have faith, they should intervene as much as they can.
The trial has two parts. One is that I should not do wrong, and the other is that I should stop wrongdoing. To stop wrongdoing, I have been guided to establish a system where, when a crime reaches the level of violating people's rights, their lives, wealth, and honor, you should create a system to catch the criminal and restore people's rights. When we form a collective system, we see that it fulfills two major responsibilities. One aspect is to ensure that there is no oppression or injustice within one's jurisdiction. No one should be wronged, and no powerful person should dominate the weak. This is the fundamental duty. This was expressed most eloquently by Caliph Abu Bakr in his first sermon. Look at that sermon sometime. He states this very point in highly articulate words. The justification for my rule is that I will ensure the weak receive their rights from the powerful. If I cannot fulfill this, it means I have negated the very purpose of my existence. This is why it exists. Beyond this, there are entire nations present. Governments will also be established in the world. Courageous people will rise and establish their own order. The instinct for dominance in human beings will also manifest. If, at the level of nations, oppression and injustice begin to spread, if rebellion and turmoil arise, if people's places of worship put at risk, if lives are in danger, if wealth is threatened, then we have been commanded to engage in jihad. In Islam, jihad has become a great act of worship. Muslims have been tasked with eliminating oppression and injustice. For this reason, severe punishments have been prescribed within the community. These punishments are manifestations of divine retribution. God Almighty says that just as I will take revenge on the day of judgment, similarly, my punishment should manifest in the world. For this, punishments have been prescribed, and we have been instructed to enforce them against the oppressors. Likewise, if any nation becomes rebellious, then we will enter the battlefield. This has been declared a great virtue. When people take a stand against oppression, God says that this is the most beloved thing to Him. Nothing is more dear to Him. War in itself is not a good thing. Even when punishing a criminal, one feels discomfort, but that very act becomes beloved to God. Why? Because He does not favor oppression. He desires that oppression be eradicated and ended.
Now, this has become entirely clear. In fact, certain acts of worship in religion have been established in this context. The Hajj itself is a symbolic representation of this ongoing struggle against oppression and the battle waged by Satan, in which the servants of the merciful engage in a practical exercise of resistance. Ghamidi Sahab, I now present to you the final part of the first question in today's session. You have explained every aspect in great detail. For a moment, let us assume that all the answers given by religion and divine tradition are not comprehensible or acceptable. In contrast, we are presented with a soulless universe, claimed to be the creator. But all questions ultimately return to it. Why does it allow oppression? Why does it not intervene here? So, there are countless answers here, whereas on the other side, there is not even a voice to explain what this whole setup is about.
There, one must first silence reason itself. That is, one must accept an unconscious universe as the creator. One must declare this entire process meaningless and purposeless, because no purpose is visible in the universe in any way. The only explanation would be that this is how it has always been and how it will always be, or that it will end someday and start operating in some other manner. You can adopt any viewpoint by ignoring your consciousness, moral framework, and existence. But if you consider the entirety of the human being, no perspective other than the guidance given by the prophets can answer these fundamental questions.
Ahsan, subhanallah, the point has become clear. In our discussion on the premises of faith, we began with one aspect with Mr. Ghamidi. 9 questions remain, and God willing, we will discuss them in future sessions. Thank you all very much.